From distinguished professor to agent of change. When brilliant mathematician Dr. Marcus Jenkins arrives at elite Westmoreland University for what seems like a routine interview, he never expects to uncover a system of discrimination that has derailed countless careers. Despite his groundbreaking research and impeccable credentials, the university's old guard subjects him to humiliation, questioning, and blatant racism at every turn. But Dr. Jenkins isn't just any candidate. With meticulous documentation and strategic thinking, he transforms prejudice into opportunity. As microaggressions escalate to public confrontation, allies emerge from unexpected places. What the university leadership discovers will change Westmoreland forever. When the truth is revealed, Dr. Jenkins faces a decision that could impact generations of scholars. Will he walk away, or will he become the transformative leader the institution desperately needs? Experience the journey of a brilliant mind who proves that true academic excellence can only exist alongside true equity. What would you do if you discovered the institution questioning your qualifications was secretly evaluating you for its highest position? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories of justice and transformation. Dr. Marcus Jenkins adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses as he reviewed his curriculum vitae one last time. The subtle tremor in his hands betrayed the significance of tomorrow's interview at Westmoreland University. After 30 years in academia, with groundbreaking publications in applied statistics that had revolutionized predictive modeling in climate science, this opportunity represented both validation and a new beginning. "Grandpa, did you pack your lucky tie?" 17-year-old Amara appeared in his study doorway, her school uniform replaced by pajamas adorned with mathematical equations. Marcus smiled, the deep lines around his eyes crinkling with affection. "It's in my garment bag, alongside the presentation materials." The modest three-bedroom home they shared in Baltimore was quiet tonight, save for the occasional creaking of the old heating system. Since Lydia's passing 2 years ago, cancer taking his wife of 35 years in mere months, and their daughter's subsequent accident 6 months later, it had been just the two of them. Marcus had transitioned from husband and professor to widower and guardian overnight. "I've been reading about Westmoreland," Amara said, settling into the worn leather chair across from his desk. "Their mathematics department is ranked third nationally, but their diversity statistics are." She trailed off, scrolling through her phone. "Less impressive," Marcus finished for her. "7% of tenured faculty are people of color, 2% are black, and you could be one of them." Pride resonated in her voice. Marcus nodded, closing his laptop. Despite his distinguished career at Madison State University, a respectable but decidedly mid-tier institution, the invitation from Westmoreland had come as a surprise. His recent paper on statistical approaches to eliminating bias in algorithmic decision-making had garnered significant attention, but elite universities rarely poached mid-career professors from less prestigious schools. "The visiting professor position would mean relocating for a year," he reminded her. "Are you sure you're ready for that kind of change? Your senior year is important." Amara's expression grew serious. "Grandpa, Westmoreland Academy is literally on the university campus. It's one of the top prep schools in the country. If we move there, I could apply for their scholarship program." Her fingers nervously twisted the ends of her braids, a habit she'd had since childhood. "And if I graduate from there, my college applications would be considerably strengthened," he completed her thought. The unspoken reality hung between them. Marcus's retirement savings had been severely depleted by Lydia's medical bills. His daughter's life insurance had provided for Amara's immediate needs, but college tuition at a top-tier university remained a daunting financial challenge. Marcus rose from his desk, his tall frame slightly stooped from years bent over research papers. At 58, he was the youngest full professor in Madison State's mathematics department, yet he felt every one of those years tonight. "Have I ever told you about my first statistics class at MIT?" he asked, moving to the bookshelf where family photographs chronicled their history. Amara rolled her eyes good-naturedly. "Only about 1,000 times. I was the only black student in a class of 52. He picked up a faded photograph of himself as a young man, standing proudly in front of the university's iconic dome. "The professor asked me on the first day if I was sure I was in the right room." "What did you say?" Amara asked, though she knew the story by heart. "I told him I'd be certain at the end of the semester when my grade would confirm it," Marcus chuckled. "When I finished with the highest marks in the class, he became my most ardent supporter, later wrote my recommendation for Oxford." He returned the photo to its place. "Throughout my career, I've had to be twice as prepared, twice as careful, twice as composed as my colleagues. That's the reality of being a black mathematician in predominantly white institutions. Is that why you never applied to places like Westmoreland before?" Amara asked softly. Marcus considered her question. "Partly, but also because I believed I could make a greater difference at Madison State. 70% of our students are first-generation college attendees. Many come from backgrounds similar to mine." He paused. "But perhaps it's time to challenge a different system from within." His phone chimed with a text message from Dr. Lawrence Chen, his former MIT classmate now serving on Westmoreland's faculty recruitment committee. "Looking forward to showing you around tomorrow. The department is excited to meet the man behind the Jenkins-Watkins statistical framework." Marcus texted back his thanks, then looked at his granddaughter. "We should both get some rest." As Amara stood to leave, she hesitated, then hugged him tightly. "You know, Grandpa, no matter what happens tomorrow, you're already a success story. Mom always said that." After she left, Marcus returned to his desk and opened his journal, a habit maintained since graduate school. Beside tomorrow's interview schedule, he wrote, "Opportunity at Westmoreland presents unique challenges and possibilities. Primary objectives: secure financial stability for Amara's education, bring diverse perspective to elite institution, maintain dignity and principles throughout process. Remember Lydia's advice: your brilliance opens doors, but your integrity decides which ones to walk through." He closed the journal, unaware that this entry would become the first in a detailed record of events that would eventually transform not just his career, but an entire institution's culture. The Westmoreland University campus sprawled across 215 acres of meticulously maintained grounds, its Gothic architecture a stark contrast to Madison State's utilitarian buildings. Dr. Marcus Jenkins arrived precisely 30 minutes early for his first appointment, navigating through the stone archways and ivy-covered walls with quiet reverence. "Dr. Jenkins," a voice called from the steps of Hamilton Hall, the mathematics department's home. Dr. Lawrence Chen, sporting the same enthusiastic smile Marcus remembered from their MIT days, descended quickly to greet him. "It's been too long, old friend." 20 years at least," Marcus replied, returning the warm handshake. "Your computational linguistics work has been impressive. I've cited your models in 3 of my recent papers." Lawrence beamed. "And your Jenkins-Watkins framework is required reading for our graduate students now. Come, let me show you around before your first meeting." As they walked, Lawrence provided a running commentary on the university's history and achievements. Founded in 1783, Westmoreland had educated presidents, Nobel laureates, and tech billionaires. Its mathematics department boasted 7 Fields Medal winners and currently held research grants totaling over $40 million. The visiting professor position would have you teaching 2 graduate seminars and mentoring 3 doctoral candidates, Lawrence explained as they entered the mathematics building. "The candidates are already selected, brilliant minds working on applications of your statistical frameworks." Marcus nodded, mentally comparing this teaching load to his current 5 courses per semester at Madison State. "And research expectations: continuation of your current work, with access to our computational resources and research assistants," Lawrence replied. "The university is particularly interested in your recent focus on eliminating bias in algorithmic decision-making." What Lawrence didn't mention, what Marcus couldn't know, was that the visiting professor position was merely a formality. 3 floors above them, in the dean's conference room, University President Alina Montgomery was addressing the Board of Trustees. "Dr. Jenkins's visit today is the final step in our evaluation process," she explained, distributing folders containing Marcus's comprehensive academic profile. "As you know, Dean Robertson's retirement next month leaves us with a critical leadership vacancy. After an extensive search, Dr. Jenkins has emerged as our prime candidate for Dean of Sciences." Board member Dr. James Williams, one of 2 Black trustees among the 12, studied Marcus's curriculum vitae with approval. His research record is impeccable. 23 major publications in the past decade alone, and his statistical frameworks have transformed predictive modeling across disciplines. "Indeed," President Montgomery agreed, "but equally important is his reputation as a mentor. His former students hold positions at Princeton, Stanford, and Google's Advanced Research Division. He's known for identifying and nurturing talent, particularly among underrepresented groups." "And his administrative experience?" questioned Trustee Victoria Blackwell, tapping her pen against the conference table. "Limited to department committee work," admitted Montgomery, "but his leadership in professional organizations suggests strong capabilities. Furthermore, his perspective as someone who built his career outside the Ivy League ecosystem could be valuable as we address our institutional challenges regarding inclusion." "Has he been informed of our interest in him for the dean position?" Williams asked. Montgomery shook her head. "We decided a more organic evaluation would yield better insights. Dr. Harrington and the mathematics faculty believe they're evaluating him for the visiting professor role only. This allows us to observe authentic interactions without the pressure of a dean candidate visit. Speaking of Harrington, Williams said cautiously, has he been informed that we're considering external candidates for the dean position? He's made it rather clear he expects to be Robertson's successor. Dr. Harrington has been told we're considering all options, Montgomery replied diplomatically. His concerns about our diversity initiatives are well documented but don't outweigh the board's commitment to institutional transformation. Meanwhile, Lawrence had led Marcus to the faculty lounge, where several professors were gathered around a table discussing recent publications. Their conversation halted abruptly as Marcus entered. Colleagues, Lawrence announced, allow me to introduce Dr. Marcus Jenkins from Madison State University. A tall, silver-haired man rose from his seat at the head of the table. Dr. William Harrington, department chair, he said, offering a perfunctory handshake. We've heard much about your statistical innovations. The slight pause before statistical innovations wasn't lost on Marcus, who had developed a keen ear for subtle academic dismissals over his career. Thank you, Marcus replied evenly. I've long admired Westmoreland's contributions to the field. Harrington gestured to the others at the table. Dr. Patricia Whitfield, our probability theory specialist, Dr. Michael Barnes, computational mathematics, and Dr. Richard Evans, our resident pure mathematics traditionalist. Each nodded in acknowledgement, though none offered a handshake or further greeting. The sudden chill in the room contrasted sharply with Lawrence's warm welcome. Your presentation is scheduled for 2 p.m. in Lecture Hall C, Harrington continued. I trust you've prepared something that won't overwhelm our graduate students. We maintain certain standards of mathematical rigor here. My presentation adapts to the audience, Marcus responded calmly. I find that clarity need not compromise sophistication. Harrington's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. Indeed, well, Lawrence can show you to your temporary office. Some of us have a prior engagement to discuss, departmental matters. As Lawrence led Marcus away, they could hear the conversation resume behind them, voices deliberately lowered but still audible. Madison State, diversity candidate, standards. Lawrence winced. I apologize for that reception. Harrington's old guard can be traditional. No need to translate, Lawrence, Marcus said quietly. I've been in academia for 30 years. What neither man knew was that in the small administrative office adjacent to the faculty lounge, Dr. Samantha Chen had overheard the entire exchange. As a junior faculty member and one of only 2 women in the mathematics department, she had been documenting the old guard's behavior for nearly 2 years. She added a new entry to her encrypted file. March 9, 2025, witnessed discriminatory reception of visiting professor candidate Dr. Marcus Jenkins. Standard pattern of Harrington, Whitfield, Barnes, and Evans dismissing external candidates who don't fit their traditional mold. Will monitor throughout visit. In his temporary office, Marcus unpacked his presentation materials and made a brief notation in his journal. Initial reception consistent with past experiences at elite institutions. Note potential allies Lawrence and clear opposition, Harrington and inner circle. Maintain professional demeanor throughout. Remember purpose, creating opportunities for Amara and students like her. He had no way of knowing that the presentation he was about to deliver would be watched not just by dismissive colleagues, but by university leadership secretly evaluating him for a position that would allow him to transform the very culture he was experiencing. Chapter 3. First Signs of Trouble. The university's administrative building housed Dr. Marcus Jenkins's temporary office, an austere space with minimal furnishings and a window overlooking a maintenance area rather than the picturesque main quad. Marcus methodically organized his materials while familiarizing himself with the campus map provided by Lawrence. At 11:30 a.m., his scheduled campus tour began with a knock on his door. Rather than Lawrence, a young administrative assistant appeared. Dr. Jenkins. I'm Melissa from Facilities Management. I'm afraid Dr. Chen was called into an emergency meeting, so I'll be showing you around instead. Marcus nodded politely. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate you stepping in. As they walked through the mathematics building, Marcus noticed a clear pattern. Faculty members they encountered often looked past him, addressing questions directly to Melissa. At one intersection of hallways, a senior professor approached them briskly. Excuse me, he said to Melissa, completely ignoring Marcus. The restroom in the West Wing needs maintenance. Can your colleague take care of it right away? Before Marcus could speak, Melissa flushed with embarrassment. Dr. Sanderson, this is Dr. Marcus Jenkins, the visiting professor candidate from Madison State. Sanderson's expression shifted from impatience to mild surprise. Oh, I see. Without offering an apology, he nodded curtly and continued on his way. Marcus made a mental note of the interaction, adding it to the growing collection of subtle indignities he'd experienced in just 2 hours on campus. The tour continued to the faculty dining hall, an elegant space with dark wood paneling and portraits of past university luminaries adorning the walls. Marcus noted that among the dozens of portraits, not a single person of color was represented. "Dr. Jenkins, we have you scheduled for lunch with several department members," Melissa informed him, leading him to a reserved table where Dr. Harrington sat with 3 other faculty members. "Ah, our visitor has arrived," Harrington announced as Marcus approached. "Please join us, Dr. Jenkins. I believe you met Doctors Whitfield, Barnes, and Evans earlier." Marcus settled into the remaining chair. "Thank you for taking the time to share lunch. We always make time to evaluate potential." "Additions to our team," Dr. Whitfield said, her emphasis on evaluate unmistakable. The conversation initially centered on neutral topics, recent developments in statistical theory, upcoming mathematics conferences, and the university's substantial research budget. Marcus engaged respectfully, sharing insights from his recent work while carefully noting how often he was interrupted or talked over. "Your paper on bias elimination in predictive modeling was interesting," Dr. Barnes commented between bites of his salad, "though I wonder if such focus on social implications dilutes the mathematical purity that should be central to our discipline." "On the contrary," Marcus replied evenly, "I find that addressing real-world implications strengthens mathematical frameworks by testing them against complex variables." "Yes, well, at Westmoreland we maintain a certain focus on theoretical foundations," Harrington interjected. "Applied work has its place, of course, but we pride ourselves on mathematical rigor above all." The subtext was clear. Marcus's research interests were considered somehow less rigorous, less mathematical despite their substantial theoretical underpinnings. As the meal progressed, Marcus attempted to share his pedagogical approaches, only to be consistently redirected or dismissed. When he mentioned his success in mentoring underrepresented students, Dr. Evans chuckled dismissively. "Yes, Madison State has quite the diverse student body, I understand. Must be quite different from training the caliber of student we attract here." Marcus maintained his composure. "Talent exists everywhere, Dr. Evans. The variable is opportunity." Before Evans could respond, a distinguished older woman approached their table. "Bill, I need to borrow you for a moment," she said to Harrington. "Board matter." "Of course, Dean Robertson," Harrington replied, rising quickly. He gestured toward Marcus. "This is one of our diversity candidates for the visiting position, Dr. Jenkins from Madison State." Dean Robertson's eyebrows rose slightly, her gaze shifting to Marcus with sudden interest. "Dr. Marcus Jenkins, the statistician behind the Jenkins-Watkins framework. I wasn't aware you were visiting today." Marcus stood and offered his hand. "A pleasure to meet you, Dean Robertson." "The pleasure is mine," she replied, her handshake firm and respectful. "Your work on statistical bias elimination has significant implications for several of our research initiatives." She turned to Harrington with a pointed look. "William, I expect you're showcasing our collaborative research opportunities appropriately?" Harrington's smile tightened. "Of course, Dean, we were just discussing departmental priorities." After Dean Robertson and Harrington stepped away, the remaining faculty members seemed visibly uncomfortable. Dr. Whitfield cleared her throat. "You'll need to use the service elevator to reach Lecture Hall C for your presentation. The main elevators are under maintenance today." Following lunch, Marcus was directed to the service area at the back of the building, a stark concrete hallway used primarily by maintenance staff. A facilities worker looked up in surprise as Marcus approached. "Can I help you, sir? This area is for university personnel only." Marcus explained that he'd been directed to use the service elevator. "That's strange," the worker replied, checking his maintenance schedule. "The main elevators are all operational. Who told you to come back here?" Marcus made another mental note, carefully documenting the time and details of the incident in his small notebook after reaching Lecture Hall C via the perfectly functional main elevator. As he prepared for his presentation, Dr. Samantha Chen slipped into the lecture hall and approached him apologetically. "Dr. Jenkins, I'm Samantha Chen, Assistant Professor of Applied Mathematics. I was supposed to give you the campus tour but was deliberately pulled into a last-minute meeting." Her expression conveyed more than her words. "I wanted to apologize and see if there's anything you need for your presentation." "Thank you, Dr. Chen," Marcus replied, recognizing a potential ally. "I believe I have everything set up correctly." Dr. Chen hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I should mention, Harrington has invited several senior undergraduates known for their challenging questions. It's not standard practice for visiting professor presentations." Marcus nodded, understanding the implied warning. "I appreciate the information." As students and faculty filed in, Marcus observed the deliberate seating arrangement. Harrington and his inner circle positioned themselves prominently in the center, while other faculty, including Dr. Chen, sat toward the periphery. When the time came for his presentation on statistical frameworks for eliminating algorithmic bias, Marcus began with the quiet confidence of a scholar who had presented at hundreds of academic venues. Despite the earlier microaggressions, his delivery remained impeccable, clear, insightful, and mathematically rigorous. 20 minutes into his presentation, he noticed Harrington whispering to Dr. Evans, both occasionally smirking at points in the presentation. When Marcus opened the floor for questions, a young man in the front row, clearly one of the challenging students Samantha had mentioned, immediately raised his hand. Your framework seems to prioritize social outcomes over mathematical precision. Isn't that a fundamental compromise of academic standards? The question was clearly rehearsed, echoing Harrington's earlier sentiments almost verbatim. An excellent question, Marcus replied. However, it contains a false dichotomy. Mathematical precision isn't compromised by considering real-world applications, it's enhanced by testing against complex variables. In fact, Marcus proceeded to demonstrate the mathematical rigor underlying his framework with such clarity and depth that even the most skeptical attendees appeared impressed. By the end of the question period, he had adeptly addressed every challenge, maintaining both his dignity and the integrity of his research. As the audience dispersed, Lawrence approached with clear admiration. That was masterful, Marcus. Behind him, Marcus overheard Harrington commenting to his colleagues. Well spoken, certainly, but I question whether his work meets our departmental standards. Perhaps we should consider whether certain candidates are truly qualified for positions at Westmoreland. The comment, deliberately audible, represented a clear escalation from subtle disrespect to overt questioning of Marcus's qualifications, despite his internationally recognized contributions to the field. Later that evening, alone in his hotel room, Marcus documented the day's events methodically in his journal. Each incident, from the mistaken identity in the hallway to the directed service elevator instruction to Harrington's final dismissive comment, all carefully noted with times, locations, and witnesses. On a separate page, he wrote, "Pattern clearly established. Documentation ongoing. Will continue to respond with professionalism and academic excellence." Tomorrow's individual faculty meetings will likely reveal further discriminatory practices. Remain strategic rather than reactive. What Marcus couldn't know was that Dean Robertson had immediately reported her encounter to President Montgomery, expressing concern about Harrington's characterization of a mathematician of Marcus's caliber as merely a diversity candidate. Nor could he know that Dr. Chen had added his experiences to her growing file of documented discrimination within the department. The board's secret evaluation of Marcus for the dean position had just gained an unexpected dimension, as his response to institutional discrimination became an unplanned but critical part of their assessment. The second day of Dr. Marcus Jenkins's visit to Westmoreland University centered around his guest lecture to the Graduate Statistical Modeling Seminar, a crucial opportunity to demonstrate his teaching approach and engage with advanced students. Marcus arrived 45 minutes early to prepare the lecture hall, methodically arranging his materials and testing the presentation system. Graduate students filtered in gradually, many introducing themselves with genuine interest in his research. Marcus engaged warmly with each one, asking thoughtful questions about their work and making mental notes of their research interests. Dr. Jenkins, a young woman with natural hair pulled into a neat bun, approached his podium. "I'm Zora Wilson, second-year doctoral candidate. Jenkins-Watkins framework forms the foundation of my dissertation on predictive modeling in urban resource allocation." "Excellent choice of application," Marcus replied, genuinely impressed. "Have you considered the neighborhood-level variance factors in your models?" "That's actually where I'm stuck," Zora admitted. "Traditional approaches seem to reinforce existing disparities." "Send me your draft work," Marcus offered. "I'd be happy to provide feedback regardless of the outcome of this visit." At precisely 10:25 a.m., 5 minutes before the scheduled start, Dr. Harrington entered with a contingent of senior faculty, including doctors Whitfield, Barnes, and Evans. They positioned themselves prominently in the back row, laptops open and expressions neutral. Marcus noted their arrival but continued preparing calmly. At 10:30 a.m., Marcus began his lecture on applied statistical frameworks in societal contexts, deliberately chosen to showcase both his mathematical rigor and real-world applications. The presentation flowed seamlessly as he guided students through complex mathematical principles with remarkable clarity. 20 minutes into his lecture, the door opened loudly. Dr. Harrington and 3 additional senior professors entered, disrupting the presentation. Marcus paused respectfully as they conspicuously took seats in the center of the room. "Please continue, Dr. Jenkins," Harrington announced with an exaggerated wave. "We wouldn't want to interrupt your interesting perspective on statistics." Marcus acknowledged them with a professional nod and resumed his lecture without missing a beat. As we were discussing, when applying the second-order correlation function to social systems, traditional approaches often fail to account for historical inequities embedded in the data. 10 minutes later, during his explanation of a particularly complex statistical transformation, Dr. Evans raised his hand. "Excuse me, Dr. Jenkins, but I must question your derivation of this formula. The standard approach at Westmoreland follows Himmelstein's method, not this alternative approach you're presenting," Marcus responded with scholarly precision. "An excellent point, Dr. Evans. Himmelstein's method provides one approach, which I'll now compare with the Jenkins-Watkins transformation to demonstrate why our method yields more accurate predictions in systems with embedded bias." He proceeded to write both equations on the board, methodically illustrating the mathematical advantages of his approach with irrefutable step-by-step derivations. The students watched with growing admiration as Marcus handled the interruption with grace and mathematical brilliance. However, the interventions from faculty continued to escalate. "But surely," Dr. Whitfield interjected without raising her hand, "prioritizing fairness as a variable compromises mathematical purity. This seems more like social activism than rigorous mathematics." "On the contrary," Marcus replied, clicking to his next slide which displayed complex mathematical proofs. "The integrity of mathematical models depends on their accuracy in representing real-world systems. When bias exists in data, which empirical evidence consistently demonstrates, failing to account for it introduces statistically significant errors. This isn't about activism, it's about mathematical precision." As Marcus continued, Harrington's interruptions became more frequent and increasingly hostile. "I find it concerning," Harrington announced loudly during Marcus's explanation of confidence intervals, "that Madison State apparently considers this type of work sufficiently rigorous. At Westmoreland, we maintain certain standards of mathematical tradition." The deliberate emphasis on Madison State and standards hung in the air. Several students shifted uncomfortably, while others looked between Marcus and Harrington with growing concern. Rather than responding directly to the provocation, Marcus addressed a fundamental mathematical principle underlying his work. "Let's examine why traditional confidence intervals fail in biased systems by returning to first principles." He proceeded to deliver such a masterful mathematical demonstration that even the most skeptical faculty members fell silent. The tension reached its peak during the question period when a visiting professor from Harrington's department asked, "Given that elite institutions have traditionally focused on theoretical mathematics rather than these applied social contexts, do you believe your work would find appropriate support at Westmoreland?" Before Marcus could respond, Harrington added, "Perhaps we should consider whether certain candidates are truly qualified for positions at institutions of Westmoreland's caliber. Not everyone's research aligns with our standards of excellence." The statement, clearly aimed at publicly undermining Marcus's credentials, crossed the line from microaggression to explicit questioning of his qualifications, despite his internationally recognized contributions to the field. A tense silence fell over the lecture hall. The graduate students glanced at each other nervously, while several faculty members from outside Harrington's inner circle appeared visibly uncomfortable. Marcus took a slow, deliberate breath before responding. "Mathematics has always evolved through challenging established paradigms. The rigorous application of mathematical principles to complex real-world systems represents not a dilution but an advancement of our discipline." He paused, meeting Harrington's gaze directly. "As for qualifications, I believe my publication record, citation index, and the practical applications of my framework speak for themselves." Without raising his voice or displaying any emotional reaction, Marcus then returned to a student's earlier technical question with such mathematical precision that the attempted humiliation backfired completely. By the end of the session, the contrast between Harrington's unprofessional behavior and Marcus's dignity and expertise could not have been more stark. As students filed out, many approached Marcus to express their admiration for both his mathematical insights and his composure. Dr. Samantha Chen, who had observed the entire exchange from the side of the room, waited until the others had left before approaching. "Dr. Jenkins, I want to apologize for what happened today. It was unprofessional and unrepresentative of many faculty members' views." She hesitated, then added quietly, "This isn't an isolated incident. Several promising candidates have experienced similar treatment." "I appreciate your candor, Dr. Chen," Marcus responded, carefully packing his presentation materials. "Would you be willing to discuss this further, perhaps over coffee tomorrow morning?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder to ensure they weren't overheard. "I would welcome that," Marcus replied, recognizing the potential ally. That evening in his hotel room, Marcus documented the day's events in meticulous detail, recording each interruption, the specific language used, and witness names. After completing his notes, he added a personal reflection. Today's confrontation confirms a systemic pattern beyond individual bias. Harrington's escalation to public questioning of qualifications despite mathematical evidence represents a significant barrier for any underrepresented scholar, regardless of credentials. Strategic response remains critical. Emotional reactions would only reinforce stereotypes and provide justification for rejection. Next steps: 1. Meet with Dr. Chen to gather institutional context. 2. Continue documenting all interactions. 3. Identify potential administrative channels if necessary. Marcus closed his journal, unaware that in President Montgomery's office, a very different conversation was taking place. Dean Robertson had reported the incident immediately, explaining in detail how Harrington had deliberately attempted to humiliate an internationally recognized scholar. "And how did Dr. Jenkins respond?" President Montgomery asked. "With remarkable composure and intellectual brilliance," Dean Robertson replied. "He transformed what Harrington intended as humiliation into a masterclass on both advanced statistics and professional dignity. The graduate students were clearly impressed, and several faculty members openly uncomfortable with Harrington's behavior." President Montgomery nodded thoughtfully. Dr. Williams was right. Jenkins may be exactly the leadership we need. What none of them realized was that Marcus's response to discrimination was being evaluated as rigorously as his academic credentials, and his strategic poise under pressure was demonstrating precisely the leadership qualities Westmoreland University secretly hoped to find in their next Dean of Sciences. Dr. Marcus Jenkins arrived at the campus coffee shop 15 minutes before his scheduled meeting with Dr. Samantha Chen. He selected a corner table with a clear view of both entrances, opened his leather-bound journal, and methodically documented his observations from the previous day's confrontation, organizing the information into a structured framework. Classification: public questioning of qualifications, direct. Deliberate interruption of presentation, procedural. Disparagement of home institution, institutional. Implicit suggestion of preferential treatment, qualification-based. Witnesses: 17 graduate students, names documented in previous entry. 4 faculty members outside Harrington's circle. Dr. Samantha Chen, applied mathematics. Dr. Chen arrived precisely on time, carrying a worn leather messenger bag and scanning the coffee shop before approaching Marcus's table. "Thank you for meeting me, Dr. Jenkins," she said, setting down her bag and taking the seat with her back to the wall, a position that allowed her to monitor the entrance. "I've taken the liberty of bringing some documentation that might provide context for your experiences." Marcus closed his journal. "I appreciate your willingness to speak candidly, Dr. Chen." "Samantha, please," she replied, extracting a tablet from her bag. "Before I share this information, I should clarify my position. I'm an assistant professor 3 years into a 7-year tenure track. My research focuses on applied mathematical modeling in environmental systems." "Similar application domains to my work," Marcus noted. "Exactly," Samantha nodded. "Which is partly why I've been tracking the department's patterns of behavior." She activated her tablet, engaged an encryption protocol, and slid it across the table. "This is a documented timeline of incidents similar to what you experienced yesterday." Marcus reviewed the meticulously organized spreadsheet. Each entry contained dates, detailed incident descriptions, affected individuals, witnesses, and outcome tracking. The pattern was unmistakable. Candidates from underrepresented groups consistently faced similar treatment, particularly those whose research challenged traditional approaches. 17 candidates in 24 months, Marcus observed quietly, all with similar experiences. "All subsequently rejected or withdrawn from consideration," Samantha confirmed, "despite credentials comparable to or exceeding those of accepted candidates." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Have you presented this documentation to administration?" 3 months ago," Samantha replied. "To Dean Robertson." She seemed genuinely concerned but indicated that without corroborating testimony, administrative options were limited. Faculty governance provisions protect departmental autonomy in hiring decisions. "And witnesses are understandably reluctant to come forward," Marcus concluded. "Precisely. Junior faculty fear tenure implications. Graduate students worry about recommendation letters. Visiting scholars don't want to burn bridges." She paused. "Your case, however, has unique elements." "Because I have little to lose professionally," Marcus surmised. "Established career, secure position at Madison State. And exceptional credentials that make the discrimination particularly blatant," Samantha added. Your Jenkins-Watkins framework is literally taught in our graduate program by professors who then question your qualifications. Marcus considered this information carefully. What do you recommend as next steps? Samantha retrieved her tablet, tapped several commands, and displayed a new document. I've identified potential allies within the university structure. Dr. James Williams on the Board of Trustees has been advocating for diversity initiatives. Dr. Lawrence Chen, as you know, is supportive. And importantly, Dean Robertson witnessed Harrington's diversity candidate comment directly. Strategic rather than confrontational response remains essential, Marcus noted. Documentation and proper channels. Agreed, Samantha replied. I've compiled the university's discrimination reporting protocols. They require substantially more evidence than typical academic grievances but provide procedural protections once initiated. As they continued their discussion, Marcus shared his own documentation approach, comparing notes on specific incidents and identifying pattern elements that constituted potential policy violations. There's one additional factor to consider, Samantha mentioned, lowering her voice. Rumors suggest Harrington expects to be named Robertson's successor when she retires next month. His behavior may be partially motivated by establishing departmental control before the transition. Marcus nodded, making a mental note of this contextual information. I have a meeting with Dean Robertson this afternoon. Would you recommend addressing these concerns directly? Cautiously, Samantha advised. Robertson has shown more receptiveness than most administrators, but institutional self-protection remains a powerful force. As their meeting concluded, they established a secure communication protocol and agreed to coordinate documentation efforts. Samantha also introduced Marcus to Dr. James Williams via email, facilitating a potential meeting during Marcus's visit. Later that morning, Marcus met with graduate students interested in his research methodology. The session proved remarkably productive, with students displaying genuine enthusiasm for his statistical frameworks and their applications to real-world problems. At 2:00 p.m., Marcus arrived for his scheduled meeting with Dean Robertson, carrying his journal and a flash drive containing organized documentation of his experiences. Dr. Jenkins, Dean Robertson greeted him warmly, I've been looking forward to our conversation. Your guest lecture has generated quite the buzz among our graduate students. I enjoyed engaging with them, Marcus replied. Their questions demonstrated sophisticated understanding of statistical principles. Indeed, Robertson gestured toward a comfortable seating area rather than the formal desk arrangement. Before we discuss departmental matters, I'd like to hear your impressions of Westmoreland, candid impressions if you're comfortable sharing them. Marcus considered his response carefully. The institution's resources are impressive and the student caliber exceptional. However, I've observed concerning patterns in departmental interactions that merit discussion. Rather than appearing surprised or defensive, Dean Robertson nodded thoughtfully. I suspected as much. Would you be willing to elaborate? Marcus proceeded to present a systematic overview of his experiences, the misdirection to service elevators, mistaken identification as maintenance staff, and culminating in Harrington's public questioning of his qualifications. He maintained a factual, unemotional tone throughout, focusing on documented incidents rather than interpretations. This aligns with other reports I've received, Robertson acknowledged after listening attentively. Dr. Chen has compiled similar documentation regarding departmental patterns. She mentioned sharing her concerns, Marcus confirmed. The consistency of these experiences suggests systemic rather than isolated issues. Robertson sighed deeply. You're absolutely right. I've been attempting to address these patterns throughout my tenure, but departmental governance structures create significant barriers. Harrington has built a powerful coalition among senior faculty. Institutional change requires both structural reform and cultural transformation, Marcus observed. Precisely, Robertson agreed. Which brings me to an important question. Despite these experiences, would you still consider joining Westmoreland's faculty? My decision would depend on institutional commitment to addressing these issues, Marcus replied diplomatically. Talented scholars from diverse backgrounds deserve equitable evaluation and support. Robertson nodded, making notes. One final question, Dr. Jenkins. In your experience mentoring underrepresented students and faculty, what strategies have proven most effective in transforming resistant institutional cultures? Marcus hadn't anticipated this line of questioning, but recognized its significance. 3 critical elements: transparent accountability systems, strategic coalition building across hierarchical boundaries, and empowering those with institutional knowledge to implement changes. Accountability without empowerment creates resentment. Empowerment without accountability permits continuing discrimination. Robertson appeared genuinely impressed by this response. Thank you for your candor, Dr. Jenkins. I believe your perspectives would be invaluable to Westmoreland's evolution. Following this meeting, Marcus received an unexpected email from Dr. James Williams, requesting a brief conversation before his departure the following day. The message included a secure meeting location away from the mathematics department. That evening, Marcus updated his journal with detailed notes from both conversations, adding a strategic analysis. Assessment 1. Robertson's receptiveness suggests administrative awareness of issues 2. Pattern documentation corroborated by multiple sources. 3. Institutional willingness to discuss problems openly indicates potential for change. 4. Strategic coalition forming Chen, Williams, Robertson. 5. Additional documentation remains critical. Next, STEPS. 1. Meet with Dr. Williams to evaluate board-level perspectives. 2. Continue systematic documentation of all interactions. 3. Prepare comprehensive incident report for official channels if necessary. 4. Maintain professional demeanor regardless of provocations. 5. Consider potential for institutional impact beyond personal decision. Marcus closed his journal, unaware that his strategic approach to discrimination was precisely what President Montgomery and the board had hoped to observe in their secret evaluation for the dean position. His ability to document systematically, respond strategically, and build alliances effectively demonstrated leadership qualities beyond his academic credentials, qualities essential for transforming Westmoreland's institutional culture. Chapter 6. The pattern emerges. Dr. Marcus Jenkins met Dr. James Williams in an unexpected location, the university's botanical gardens, far from the mathematics department's scrutiny. The early morning mist created a natural privacy barrier as they walked among carefully tended exhibits. "Thank you for making time before your departure, Dr. Jenkins," Williams began. "I serve on Westmoreland's Board of Trustees, with particular focus on academic excellence and institutional culture." "I appreciate the invitation," Marcus replied. "Dr. Chen mentioned your interest in diversity initiatives." Williams nodded, gesturing toward a secluded bench. "More specifically, I've been documenting the systemic barriers that prevent Westmoreland from truly achieving its academic potential." He removed a tablet from his briefcase, activating it with biometric authentication. "What you've experienced isn't isolated, it's part of a documented pattern." The screen displayed a comprehensive analysis of hiring patterns across departments spanning 15 years. The mathematics department showed particularly striking statistics: only 3 faculty of color hired in that period, none achieving tenure. "These quantitative patterns align with qualitative documentation from Dr. Chen and others," Williams explained. "Westmoreland systematically invites candidates from underrepresented groups solely to satisfy diversity requirements with predetermined negative outcomes." Marcus studied the data methodically. The consistency across departments suggests institutional rather than merely individual bias. "Precisely." Williams swiped to a new screen displaying institutional benchmarking. "Elite peer institutions have made significant progress while Westmoreland has stagnated or regressed in key metrics." "What's prevented institutional intervention?" Marcus inquired. Williams sighed. "A complex intersection of factors: faculty governance protections, influential alumni resistant to change, and administrative hesitation to challenge entrenched powers." He paused. "However, Dean Robertson's retirement creates a unique opportunity for transformation." "Through her successor," Marcus observed. "Yes, the next Dean of Sciences will have significant influence over departmental policies, hiring practices, and institutional culture." Williams met Marcus's gaze directly, "which brings me to my true purpose in meeting you." "I'm listening," Marcus replied, maintaining his characteristic composure. "What I'm about to share must remain confidential," Williams prefaced. "The visiting professor position for which you've been ostensibly interviewing is genuine. However, the board and President Montgomery have simultaneously been evaluating you for Dean Robertson's position." Marcus raised an eyebrow, the first visible surprise he displayed during his entire visit. "I see. Your academic credentials made you an initial candidate," Williams continued. "Your responses to the discrimination you've encountered have confirmed your potential as a transformative leader." Marcus processed this revelation carefully. "Does Dr. Harrington know about this evaluation?" "He knows external candidates are being considered, but not specifically about you. He's assumed the position would naturally be his as the senior department chair." Explaining his particularly hostile response to my visit, Marcus noted, "he perceives me as blocking his advancement rather than merely competing for a visiting position." "Exactly," Williams nodded. "His behavior has inadvertently provided the administration with clear evidence of the discrimination patterns we've been documenting." Marcus considered this information thoughtfully. What are the next steps in this evaluation process? You have one final meeting scheduled with Harrington and his core faculty group this afternoon. They believe it's a standard candidate assessment discussion. Williams leaned forward slightly. In reality, President Montgomery and several board members will be monitoring the interaction through the conference room's video system, with your knowledge but not Harrington's. Surveillance without consent raises ethical concerns, Marcus observed. The conference room has standard notices about recording for security purposes, Williams clarified. We're not introducing new monitoring, merely paying attention to existing systems during a specific interaction. The ethical imperative of addressing discriminatory practices outweighs the minimal privacy impact. Marcus nodded, accepting this explanation. And the ultimate objective: to document Harrington's behavior in an indisputable format that even his supporters cannot dismiss, Williams replied. Your demonstrated poise under pressure suggests you'll maintain professionalism regardless of provocation. I understand. Marcus made notes in his journal. Beyond this immediate situation, what is the board's commitment to addressing the broader patterns you've documented? Williams appeared pleased with this question. The board authorized a comprehensive diversity initiative 6 months ago, including policy revisions, accountability measures, and allocated resources. What's missing is leadership willing to implement these changes effectively, particularly in STEM departments with entrenched resistance. As their meeting concluded, Williams provided Marcus with secure access to the full institutional data, enabling him to review Westmoreland's diversity statistics, policy frameworks, and historical patterns before his final interview. Throughout the morning, Marcus systematically analyzed this information, identifying structural barriers and potential intervention points. He connected virtually with Dr. Chen to compare observations and refine his understanding of institutional dynamics. Harrington has scheduled additional faculty for your final meeting, Chen informed him, including several known for particularly aggressive questioning of candidates from underrepresented groups. Thank you for the insight, Marcus replied. I'll prepare accordingly. At 2:00 p.m., Marcus arrived at the designated conference room for his final evaluation meeting, fully aware of its dual purpose. He arranged his materials methodically, positioning his journal to enable inconspicuous documentation of key interactions. Dr. Harrington arrived with 6 senior faculty members, twice the number originally scheduled. Dr. Jenkins, he announced with artificial cordiality, we've assembled our department's most distinguished scholars to evaluate your candidacy thoroughly. I appreciate the comprehensive assessment, Marcus responded evenly, noting the strategic positioning of faculty around the table to create maximum psychological pressure, a common tactic he'd encountered throughout his career. Let's begin with your publication record, Harrington stated, opening a folder. While Madison State may consider your output substantial, Westmoreland's standards differ significantly. Your focus on social implications, rather than pure mathematical advancement, raises questions about scholarly rigor. Marcus recognized the deliberate mischaracterization of his internationally recognized research. My publication record includes 23 peer-reviewed articles in top-tier journals, including pure mathematical foundations and theoretical statistical applications, the same journals where Westmoreland faculty regularly publish. Before Harrington could respond, Dr. Whitfield interjected. Yet your work consistently emphasizes applications rather than advancing core mathematical principles. Wouldn't you agree your approach better suits teaching institutions than research universities? The distinction you're drawing doesn't reflect contemporary mathematical scholarship, Marcus replied calmly. Applied and theoretical mathematics have always informed each other. My Jenkins-Watkins framework has generated 3 new theoretical proofs subsequently applied by researchers at MIT, Princeton, and Oxford. For the next 45 minutes, Marcus responded to increasingly hostile questioning with impeccable professionalism. He redirected mischaracterizations, corrected factual errors, and maintained scholarly dialogue despite clear attempts to provoke an emotional response. Frankly, Dr. Jenkins, Harrington finally stated, while your background might satisfy diversity requirements, we must prioritize academic excellence. Westmoreland's reputation depends on maintaining certain standards that align with our traditional approach to mathematical scholarship. The statement linking diversity directly to compromised standards crossed from implicit to explicit bias. Marcus noted the precise wording in his journal while maintaining eye contact with Harrington. Academic excellence and diversity are complementary rather than competing priorities, Marcus responded. My research citation index ranks in the top 2% globally among mathematicians. The Jenkins-Watkins framework has generated over $40 million in research funding across institutions. These objective metrics transcend subjective assessments of tradition versus innovation. Harrington's expression hardened. Let me be direct, Dr. Jenkins. Your credentials might be sufficient for Madison State, but Westmoreland maintains higher standards. Perhaps your time would be better spent at institutions with more flexible criteria. The room fell silent at this overtly discriminatory statement. Several faculty members shifted uncomfortably, while others maintained deliberate neutrality. Marcus allowed the silence to extend for 3 calculated seconds before responding. Dr. Harrington, I've addressed your questions regarding my qualifications with objective metrics and scholarly evidence. My record speaks for itself. The only flexibility I observe in this discussion involves selectively applying different standards to different candidates. Before Harrington could respond, the conference room door opened unexpectedly. President Alina Montgomery entered, accompanied by Dean Robertson and 2 board members including Dr. Williams. Dr. Jenkins, Dr. Harrington, President Montgomery greeted them. I apologize for interrupting, but I believe this discussion has provided sufficient clarity for our purposes. Harrington appeared momentarily flustered. President Montgomery, we're conducting a standard candidate evaluation. Yes, I'm aware, Montgomery interrupted calmly. We've been monitoring the discussion through the conference system. Dr. Jenkins, would you be willing to step outside briefly with Dean Robertson while I speak with Dr. Harrington and his colleagues? Of course, President Montgomery, Marcus replied, gathering his materials with deliberate composure. As Marcus exited with Dean Robertson, he overheard President Montgomery addressing the faculty. Gentlemen, ladies, I believe we need to discuss Westmoreland's standards for professional conduct and equitable evaluation processes. Dr. Williams, would you please activate the recording playback? In the adjacent office, Dean Robertson turned to Marcus with a mixture of apology and admiration. I want to officially apologize for what you've experienced, Dr. Jenkins. It's unacceptable and contradicts the values Westmoreland aspires to uphold. Thank you, Dean Robertson, Marcus replied. May I ask what happens next? President Montgomery will be joining us shortly to discuss that very question, Robertson answered. But first, I'd like to ask, despite everything you've experienced, would you still consider taking a leadership role at Westmoreland? Marcus considered the question carefully. My decision would depend on institutional commitment to addressing the patterns we've documented. If my presence could contribute to meaningful transformation, I would consider it professionally and ethically valuable, despite the challenges. Dean Robertson nodded with evident approval. That's precisely the perspective we hoped you might maintain. What Marcus couldn't yet know was that his response to institutional discrimination had just become the final confirmation the board needed, demonstrating not just academic excellence, but the strategic leadership and ethical commitment essential for the dean position they had secretly been evaluating him for all along. Chapter 7: The Unexpected Revelation. President Alina Montgomery joined Dr. Marcus Jenkins and Dean Robertson 15 minutes later, her expression composed but resolute as she entered the private conference room. Dr. Jenkins, she began, I want to sincerely apologize for the treatment you've experienced during your visit. What you witnessed represents a pattern we've been working to address, and your documentation will prove invaluable to that effort. Marcus acknowledged her apology with a professional nod. Thank you, President Montgomery. I'd like to explain what's happening now and make you an unexpected proposition, she continued, taking a seat across from him. Dr. Harrington and several senior faculty members have been placed on administrative leave pending a formal investigation into discriminatory practices. A decisive response, Marcus observed, maintaining his characteristic composure. Necessary and overdue, Montgomery replied. The recording of today's meeting, combined with documentation from Dr. Chen and others, provided the evidence we needed for immediate action under university policy. Dean Robertson opened a folder containing institutional data. Westmoreland has maintained a facade of pursuing diversity while systematically undermining candidates through exactly the kind of treatment you experienced. The board has authorized comprehensive intervention. Which brings us to our proposition, Montgomery stated, sliding an official university folder toward Marcus. As you may have gathered from Dr. Williams, your evaluation for a visiting professor position was concurrent with consideration for a more significant role. Marcus opened the folder to find a formal offer letter for the position of Dean of Sciences at Westmoreland University, effective immediately. The board unanimously approved your appointment this morning, Montgomery explained. Your academic credentials are exceptional, but your strategic response to discrimination demonstrated precisely the leadership qualities Westmoreland needs at this critical juncture. You maintain professionalism under deliberate provocation, Dean Robertson added. Documented patterns systematically, built strategic alliances, and demonstrated commitment to institutional improvement rather than personal vindication. These are rare leadership qualities. Marcus studied the offer letter carefully. This is certainly unexpected. We understand this represents a significant departure from your expectations, Montgomery acknowledged. The dean position would provide authority to implement genuine structural changes, addressing not just symptoms but root causes of institutional discrimination. The transformation must be systematic and sustainable, Marcus noted, considering the implications. Precisely why we need someone with your strategic approach, Robertson agreed. My retirement was originally scheduled for next month, but in light of today's events, the board has approved an accelerated transition should you accept. Marcus turned to a specific section of the offer letter. These administrative powers are unusually broad. Deliberately so, Montgomery confirmed. The board has authorized exceptional latitude for implementing reforms, including faculty evaluation restructuring, hiring protocol revisions, and cultural transformation initiatives. I'd also have direct oversight of the investigation into documented discrimination patterns, Marcus observed. Complete independence and authority, Robertson nodded, with administrative support and board backing for necessary actions. For several moments, Marcus said nothing, methodically analyzing the implications. Finally, he looked up from the document. May I ask why you didn't disclose this evaluation earlier? A valid question, Montgomery acknowledged. The board wanted to observe authentic interactions between you and departmental faculty, particularly how you would respond to discrimination without institutional protection. Your handling of these situations revealed more about your leadership capacity than any formal interview could. We needed to see if you could maintain strategic focus under pressure, Robertson added. Your response has been extraordinary, documenting meticulously, building alliances, following proper channels, and maintaining dignity throughout. Marcus nodded, accepting this explanation. A final question: what support mechanisms exist for implementing potentially controversial reforms? Montgomery smiled, clearly pleased with this practical inquiry. The board has allocated a $20 million institutional transformation fund, available immediately for your use in reform initiatives. Additionally, you'll have authority to restructure departmental governance, revise hiring and promotion protocols, and implement mandatory bias training. Full administrative support is guaranteed, with the understanding that meaningful transformation requires both structural changes and cultural shifts, Robertson emphasized. Policy revisions alone won't address entrenched resistance. Indeed, Marcus agreed. Institutional transformation requires comprehensive strategy, addressing systems, culture, and accountability mechanisms simultaneously. Exactly why you're the right leader for this moment, Montgomery concluded. Will you accept the position, Dr. Jenkins? Marcus opened his journal to a new page, making careful notes as he considered his response. After several minutes of deliberate contemplation, he looked up. I'll accept on 2 conditions, he stated calmly. First, comprehensive amnesty and non-retaliation protections for Dr. Chen and others who documented discrimination. Second, immediate activation of the university's institutional transformation framework, with quarterly progress reporting to the board and campus community. Both conditions are entirely reasonable and already incorporated into the board's authorization, Montgomery responded, extending her hand. Welcome to Westmoreland, Dean Jenkins. As they finalized administrative details, Dr. Williams joined them with breaking news. The mathematics department graduate students have organized a petition supporting Dr. Jenkins and calling for departmental reform. Over 200 signatures gathered in just 2 hours. A strong foundation for transformation, Dean Robertson observed. Indeed, Marcus agreed, community engagement will be essential for sustainable change. Later that evening, Marcus called his granddaughter Amara with the unexpected news. Dean of Sciences, she exclaimed. Grandpa, that's incredible. A significant responsibility, Marcus acknowledged, and not without challenges. The kind of challenges you've been preparing for your entire career, Amara responded confidently. I would have been so proud. There's something else, Marcus added. The position includes housing on campus, a historic residence large enough for both of us, and as Dean's family you'd qualify for the full scholarship at Westmoreland Academy. Amara fell silent for a moment. So we're really moving, if you're willing, Marcus replied. This position represents an opportunity to create meaningful change, not just for us, but for countless students and faculty who deserve equitable evaluation. Like the changes your professor made at MIT after challenging you on your first day, Amara recalled, the ones that made it possible for you to succeed there. Exactly, Marcus smiled. Institutional transformation creates pathways for future generations. After their call, Marcus opened his journal and made a final entry for the day. Transition Framework Preliminary Outline. Phase 1 Assessment Weeks 1-4. Comprehensive Audit of Hiring Promotion Patterns. Documentation Consolidation, Chen's Records, Williams Data. Faculty-Student Listening Sessions. Policy Review and Gap Analysis. Phase 2 Immediate Interventions, Weeks 5-8. Discrimination Investigation Completion. Bias Response Protocol Implementation. Interim Hiring Process Reforms. Administrative Restructuring. Phase 3 Structural Transformation, Months 3-6. Faculty Evaluation Criteria Revision. Transparency Mechanism Implementation. Accountability Framework Development. Mentorship Program Establishment. Phase 4 Cultural Shift, Month 6-12. Community Engagement Initiatives. Professional Development Programming. Success Metrics and Reporting Systems. Institutional Narrative Transformation. Key Principle: balance accountability with opportunity for growth. Strategic Objective: transform Westmoreland from an institution with a diversity problem to a national model for inclusive excellence. As he closed his journal, Marcus reflected on the unexpected path that had brought him to this moment. What had begun as a routine job interview had evolved into an opportunity for institutional transformation, one that would impact not just his career, but the academic futures of countless scholars from underrepresented backgrounds. The challenges ahead were substantial, but for the first time in his career, Marcus would have the authority and resources to address systemic barriers directly. As he had told Amara at the beginning of this journey, perhaps it's time to challenge a different system from within. 6 months into Dr. Marcus Jenkins's tenure as Dean of Sciences at Westmoreland University, the institution's transformation was well underway. The historic Dean's Residence, once a symbol of the university's exclusive traditions, now hosted a monthly forum where faculty, students, and staff from across departments gathered to discuss ongoing reform initiatives. Today's session had just concluded, and Marcus stood at the bay window of his study, watching as attendees dispersed across the quad. His granddaughter Amara appeared in the doorway, her Westmoreland Academy uniform perfectly pressed, a calculus textbook tucked under her arm. "Another successful forum?" she asked, setting her backpack down. "Productive dialogue," Marcus confirmed. "The new faculty hiring protocols are showing promising initial results. 3 departments have implemented the standardized evaluation matrix, with considerable improvement in candidate assessment consistency." Amara smiled. "Ms. Rodriguez mentioned your reforms in contemporary issues class today. She called it institutional recalibration through systematic intervention. An accurate if somewhat clinical description," Marcus acknowledged with a slight smile. "How are your advanced mathematics studies progressing?" "Challenging but rewarding," Amara replied. "Dr. Chen's weekend mentorship program has been instrumental. 17 of us now, all from underrepresented backgrounds in STEM." Marcus nodded with quiet satisfaction. The mentorship initiative had been among his first implemented reforms, creating structured support networks for students from backgrounds traditionally marginalized in elite academic environments. A gentle knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Dr. Samantha Chen entered, carrying a leather portfolio. "The quarterly metrics report is ready for your review, Dean Jenkins," she announced, now serving as Associate Dean for Inclusive Excellence, a position created under Marcus's administrative restructuring. "Thank you, Samantha," Marcus replied. "How do the numbers look?" "Quite promising," she responded, opening the portfolio to reveal comprehensive data visualizations. "Hiring diversity up 47% across STEM departments. Retention rates for underrepresented faculty improved by 23%. Student diversity in graduate programs increased 31%, and the cultural assessment indicators," Marcus inquired, scanning the metrics. "Also positive, though more gradual," Samantha acknowledged. "Faculty survey shows 68% reporting improved departmental climate, up from 42% in our baseline assessment. Progress," Marcus observed, "though significant work remains." "The board is extremely pleased," Dr. James Williams commented as he joined them, having attended the forum. "President Montgomery asked me to inform you that the Institutional Transformation Fund has been renewed for an additional 3 years based on these results." Marcus nodded, making notes in his journal, the same leather-bound volume that had documented his interview experience, now filled with strategic planning frameworks and implementation metrics. "The structural reforms are taking root," he acknowledged, "but sustainable transformation requires cultural shift as well as policy changes." "Speaking of which," Williams continued, "the case against Dr. Harrington and his colleagues has been resolved. The evidence was irrefutable. The investigation had documented 15 years of systematic discrimination, resulting in Harrington's resignation and significant consequences for his closest allies. More importantly, the process had established clear precedent for addressing discriminatory practices throughout the institution. And the mathematics department restructuring, Marcus inquired, proceeding exceptionally well under Dr. Chen's leadership, Williams confirmed. The interim chair has implemented all recommended reforms and departmental climate surveys show marked improvement. Marcus turned to Samantha. Your coordination of the transformation framework has been exemplary. Meaningful change requires both leadership vision and implementation infrastructure, she replied. The systems you've established provide sustainable mechanisms rather than merely symbolic initiatives. As they reviewed additional metrics, President Montgomery arrived for their scheduled meeting. Her expression conveyed both satisfaction and determination. Dean Jenkins, the board has reviewed your comprehensive quarterly report, she began. They've unanimously approved the expanded institutional transformation initiative you proposed. Excellent news, Marcus responded. The cross-departmental approach is essential for addressing structural barriers comprehensively. Your methodical implementation has won over even the most skeptical trustees, Montgomery acknowledged. The balance of accountability with opportunity for growth has prevented the defensive resistance typical in institutional change efforts. Strategic rather than reactive approaches yield sustainable results, Marcus observed. After completing their administrative discussion, Marcus excused himself for a previously scheduled appointment, a virtual mentoring session with Zora Wilson, the graduate student he had met during his visiting lecture. Under his guidance, her dissertation on predictive modeling and urban resource allocation had evolved into groundbreaking research now attracting attention from major institutions. Later that evening, as Marcus completed his daily journal entry, he reflected on the 6-month transformation journey. His systematic approach had yielded measurable results, but equally important were the individual stories of faculty and students now thriving in an environment increasingly characterized by equitable evaluation and support. His phone chimed with a message from Dr. Lawrence Chen. Jenkins-Watkins' statistical framework now required reading across all graduate STEM programs. Poetic justice indeed. Marcus smiled at the observation. What had begun as a routine job interview had evolved into an opportunity for institutional transformation that would impact generations of scholars. The mathematics department that had once questioned his qualifications now taught his frameworks as foundational principles. In his journal, Marcus added a final note for the day. Transformation METRICS 6-month assessment. 1. Structural changes. Standardized evaluation protocols implemented across 7 departments. Transparent hiring promotion criteria established. Bias response mechanisms institutionalized. Mentorship infrastructure developed for faculty and students. 2. Cultural indicators. Climate survey improvements, 68% positive responses. Cross-departmental collaboration increase, 43%. Self-reporting of microaggressions, indicating trust in response systems. Student engagement in institutional governance, plus 27%. 3. Individual impact stories. 17 underrepresented students in STEM mentorship program. 5 faculty discrimination cases resolved through new protocols. Zora's dissertation evolving into landmark research. Amara and peers finding academic community and support. Key insight: institutional transformation requires both policy reform and narrative shift. Systems create parameters, people create culture. Success depends on addressing both dimensions simultaneously through strategic, documented interventions. As Marcus closed his journal, he gazed at the framed photograph of his late wife Lydia that now stood on his desk in the dean's office. Beside it was a more recent addition, a picture of Amara in her Westmoreland Academy uniform standing proudly beside her math competition team. Your brilliance opens doors, Lydia had advised him decades ago, but your integrity decides which ones to walk through. Through strategic response rather than emotional reaction, through documentation rather than confrontation, through system change rather than personal vindication, Marcus had transformed an experience of discrimination into an opportunity for institutional justice. The doors now opening would benefit not just his granddaughter, but countless students and faculty who would never face the barriers he had methodically dismantled. Justice, Marcus reflected as he prepared for tomorrow's Faculty Senate presentation, wasn't merely about personal vindication. It was about creating systems where dignity and achievement were evaluated by the same standards for everyone. The transformation of Westmoreland University remained a work in progress, but the foundation had been firmly established through strategic vision, methodical implementation, and unwavering commitment to both excellence and equity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, Dr. Marcus Jenkins, Dean of Sciences at Westmoreland University, allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction in how far they had already come.